Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about my breastfeeding experience and then also some different products that I use to help support me in that, and then also supplementing with formula and then eventually switching over to formula. So this is a hard video to make. If you are a mother who has struggled with breastfeeding, you will understand this. Breastfeeding was probably the single most mentally exhausting and emotionally draining thing that I've ever had to go through. It definitely broke me down. And just the general guilt you feel all of the time is really challenging. So that's where I am. Grayson's 10 months old and I just now feel like I can mentally talk about this without getting too emotional. So I filmed this several times already and I keep rambling like crazy. So I apologize if I go down a path and get lost, but we'll kind of start at the beginning. I started producing colostrum when I was about 32 weeks pregnant. If you don't know what colostrum is, it's called liquid gold because it's full of all of these amazing nutrients to help support your baby. And that is going to come in usually like when you're late in your pregnancy or like right after you give birth, and then your milk will come in several days after the baby has been born. Okay, so let's get started. Grayson was born on November 13th, 2019, and he was 9 pounds 6 ounces, so he's a very big boy. Right before he was born, the nurse had asked me if we were going to be supplementing with donor breast milk or if we were going to be supplementing with formula. I was dumbfounded because I had no idea what to respond. I didn't think we would need either. So naive, so naive. But I think the nurse could tell that we were confused or didn't know how to respond. And so she proceeded to tell us that the formula would change the chemical like components in his stomach, and therefore his stomach would never be the same if he had formula. So she recommended that we do donor breast milk. By the way, it is absolutely not anyone's place to tell you something like that. There's a lot that goes into breastfeeding or just feeding your child in general, and that is sometimes it's not even a choice. Sometimes we have to do what we have to do. So I don't know, it's just crazy to me that someone in the medical profession who understands how challenging breastfeeding can be, because she was a mother, telling a new mother, oh yeah, like that's gonna mess up his stomach, like you don't want to give him that. Crazy. So he was born and immediately latched on. So I was so excited when he did that. Now I know that's very common for babies to latch on immediately. And then the struggle with breastfeeding is really anything after that. So he latched on immediately the first time. And then we just really struggled. I could not get him to open his mouth. I think that was our first hurdle. He would not take a bottle. He would not take my nipple. He would not take a pacifier. Could not get him to pry it, like to open his mouth. So you have nurses coming in the room every 2 hours yelling at you. They don't care about you as a human being. In my experience, I didn't have a great experience at the hospital. I would not recommend the hospital that I went to, and I will not be going back there. But I had nurses coming into my room every 2 hours yelling at me, okay, he's hungry, he needs to eat now, you need to feed him now. They did not care about me as a human being and if I was doing okay. And I'm so glad that they care about my baby and making sure he's okay. But it's all about how you present yourself. So they're yelling at me, you need to feed him, you need to feed him now, wake up, you need to feed him. There was one time in particular, like Josh, Grayson, and myself had all dozed off in the middle of the night, and then woke up to nurses yelling at us that we needed to feed him now. It's been too long since he's eaten, and I'm like asleep, like, oh my God, what's happening? So you have that, and I couldn't get him to open his mouth. So eventually I had a nurse come in and say, hey, you need to feed him now. She was like one of the nicer ones, I guess. I don't know. None of them were great. And I was like, okay, I know I need to feed him. I don't know how to do that because I can't get his mouth open. And I asked for help, and luckily, I guess she had enough time in her day to stick around for a little bit and help us feed him. She eventually got his mouth open enough to where we could get the nipple, like the bottle, in his mouth with the donor breast milk, and he did eat a little bit. Later that day, I think it was later that day, my memory of the hospital stay is very vague and non-descriptive. Like, I don't know times. I think it was later that day where I had a good feed with him. So I had a really good feed. He was latched for like 19 minutes, I think. The reason I remember that is because I heard myself in a video we had recorded in the hospital saying, oh yeah, he was latched for like 19 minutes. So right after that feeding, a lactation specialist came in and was like, do you need help? Grayson was screaming. I was changing a poopy explosion diaper. He was screaming, and she walks in the room to talk to me, and I'm like, oh no, it's fine, it's fine. Like, I'm like, go away, please. Like, he's screaming, I've got a poop explosion. Probably not the best time to talk to me. But I was like, it's okay, we're doing good, you can go now. And I was like, we had a really good feed earlier. He was latched for like 20 minutes. We're good. And so she left and didn't come back the rest of the day. I thought because we had that one good feed that we would be good. Nope. So the next day, we're doing a decent job at latching. I can't get him to stay latched for very long without falling asleep. I didn't know if he had a proper latch. I was not pumping nearly enough. I very vaguely remember pumping in the hospital. I think I only pumped a few times, three or four maybe. And you need to pump much more frequently than that if that's what you're going to do. But again, hindsight is 20/20. So we also had a lot of visitors, like revolving door amount of visitors, all of the time during the hospital stay. And I am not comfortable with my boobs out. Some people are. My God, more power to you. I hope that's me for my next kids. But at that point, I was not comfortable. And so people would come in and come in and come in. You get so distracted by them. I just did not have that mindset of, I need to feed him every 2 hours. If he's not latched onto my boob, I need to be pumping, because pumping not only helps like get the milk out, but it helps tell your body that you need to be producing milk because it's being pulled out of you. Oh, guys, it's hard. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, you need to be more structured, Ashley. Write it down on your book, like put it in your phone. Every 2 hours you need to be pumping or feeding him. It just needs to be so structured if you're going to be successful. And I think that was like the start of our problems. So, okay, it's Friday now. He was born on Wednesday, and we are getting ready to go home. And I had breastfed him. But it had been like 45 minutes, and I was like, he was dressed in his outfit, all of our bags were packed, ready to go, and I remember he did something. He was either rooting. If you don't know this, babies give you different signs and signals when they're hungry, and I was excited that I was learning those at the hospital. So he was starting to root around a little bit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's hungry. Like, we need to feed him. we're going to be taking him home. It's a 20-minute ride. I don't want him to get fussy on the way home. Like, he needs to be fed. And so my nurse comes in and I said, I think he's hungry. Can we get some donor breast milk? And she's like, why do you think he's hungry? And I said, well, he's doing this and that's telling me that he's hungry. And he started to doze off and she's like, he looks like he's sleeping to me. And I was like, no, I think he's hungry. I was like, can we please get donor breast milk? And she wouldn't give us the milk because she didn't think that he was hungry. And she looks at me and she goes, what are you gonna do when you go home? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do when I go home. I have no idea what I'm doing. You clearly should not be a nurse if that's how you want to treat people, by the way. How horrifying. And she was a mother too. It's horrifying. And it's just mind-boggling to me that several of my nurses were mothers, and they still treated me like that. Oh my God, it's crazy. So anyway, we go home. I'm defeated because my last experience at the hospital was a nurse telling me, what are you gonna do when you get home? Because I don't have donor breast milk, and that's what we used in the hospital. I didn't know. So we get home, and thank God for these supplement companies that send formula to new mothers. Even if you don't sign up for it, you get it. So Similac and then Enfamil sent me packages, sample packages of formula. Had I not had those, like, it's not the end of the world. We could have gone to Walmart. I would not have known where to start looking for formula, what to buy. I would have had no idea. But thank God for these companies who send new moms these products. Almost immediately when we got home, we had a big explosion. That's a whole other story. We were very exhausted, very emotional. Everyone was at our house. It was chaos. And we decided to give him a formula bottle. I had very mixed emotions about it. I was very upset, very defeated. I felt like I was a failure. I feel like I cried, but I don't remember specifically. And then we gave him the bottle and I felt relief because he was satiated. I knew he was full and he was good and he was okay. My milk didn't come in until about 5 days postpartum, and it was not like a whoosh, bam, your milk's in. It was like, oh, I think my milk's in, but I think it should be more than this. So my milk came in about 5 days postpartum, and I didn't have a huge supply. There was a 2-week period where my supply was good, and during those 2 weeks, I needed to do better than I did. Several things go into breastfeeding. Obviously, genetics, right? Then you have, I was dehydrated. I was not drinking enough water, or enough liquids in general. I was probably not eating the right foods to help produce more breast milk. I was exhausted. That didn't help. I was not pumping nearly enough, and I was not feeding him on the boob as much as I needed to. So the first 6 weeks of his life, I had very mixed emotions about breastfeeding. There were days where I tried so hard. I would put him on the breast, and he would breastfeed. On my other breast, I would have our Lancino handheld manual breast pump. Essentially, it just suction cups onto your boob, on the other boob that the baby is not on. So you've got baby on one side, you've got your Haka or your Lancino suctioned on the other boob, and it kind of pulls out the extra milk. So I would do that, and then I would dump that milk from the cup, essentially, into a bottle, and then I would give him the bottle. And then once he reached a few weeks old, that was not enough either, so I would do that, and then I would make a formula bottle and give him a formula bottle. So we had a lot going on. So that's called triple feeding, and I did that for actually 8 weeks, because he was breastfed for 8 weeks, but I would say the first 6 weeks, I tried hard. I really did. But looking back, I did not pump nearly enough. And there were plenty of times where it was easier to give him a formula bottle. And then I would have people saying, it's okay, Ashley, like if you just give him formula, it's okay. And I'm like, no, it's not okay. It's not okay. But I would give him a formula bottle and then I hate myself for it. I don't know what else to say. As far as that's concerned, it was a lot. I pumped probably 3 or 4 times a day, which I probably needed to pump like 5 or 6 times a day. And I probably needed to pump once during the night to help keep my supply up, because I had a low milk supply. If you have a really healthy supply, you probably don't need to pump at night, like in the middle of the night, because you don't really want your boobs to produce more at night. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that by any means, but that's what we were doing. I had this pump. So this is the Medela Pump and Style Advanced system. This was free through insurance. Normally it costs about $450. So if you have insurance and you're planning to pump or breastfeed, I highly recommend going through insurance because it should be free or very inexpensive. So that was the pump that I used. I used the Haka. I also used a nipple shield. So the last day at the hospital, I talked about, I had a lactation specialist who helped us, and I thought she was fantastic at the time, but like looking back, she should have listened to my needs more. But she introduced the nipple shield to us, and essentially it just is a little cover, goes over your nipple, and it does several things. So it helps baby to latch. It also helps with sensitive nipples, like if you have very sore nipples from breastfeeding, it helps with that, and I did enjoy the nipple shield. It did help with pain, and it did help him latching. But of course, I had read, online somewhere that you were a failure if you used nipple shields, and you shouldn't have to use nipple shields. Of course, there's so many freaking judgy people everywhere about everything. So I felt like crap about using the nipple shield. Essentially, just the entire time I was breastfeeding, I was beating myself up for everything I was doing. But it's a lot. So at my 6 weeks appointment with my doctor, I had told her that I was really struggling with my milk supply, had a low milk supply, and she asked me if I thought I wanted to continue breastfeeding. She kind of talked about her experiences. She had 3 children, and they all were breastfed to different degrees. And she asked me if I wanted a medication to improve my supply, and I was really torn because I was so drained that I didn't know if I could even continue. But I told her that I wanted the medication to increase my supply and I would give it a try. So I tried it for a few days. It did increase my supply, but I was still producing like a third of what Grayson needed to survive. And so we were having to triple feed another 2 weeks. And then when I hit 8 weeks postpartum, guys, I just couldn't do it anymore. My supply kept on tapering off more and more. The triple feeding was exhausting. Taking care of a newborn, and everything that comes with that. And then you're breastfeeding, and then you're giving them a bottle, and then you're making a bottle, and you've got all of these dishes to do every single day. And then I was having to wash out my Haka or my Lancino suction cup breast pump thing after every use. And then it's a lot. And I think just knowing that it's going to be a lot going into it probably would help. And knowing that it needs to be structured, but I didn't know that. And we had gone too far with my Milo milk supply. I think if I had gotten it up after like a week or 2 weeks, I think I could have powered through a lot longer. But it just wasn't there. And I do think it was partially genetic, but I do think a lot of it was that, like I said, I was dehydrated. I wasn't eating enough food, like of the nutrition to help me produce milk. And a lot of it was at the hospital stay. Like I wasn't pumping nearly enough at the hospital. It was just a lot. So that's kind of our story. We currently use the Enfamil infant formula, the Neuro Pro. It's the yellow can. We started out with the Gentle Ease, the purple can, the Enfamil, and because he was very gassy and fussy for a while, and that one worked really well, but we transitioned him to just the regular infant when he was 6 or 7 months old, when we switched daycares, because that was the formula that the daycare provided, and I didn't want to have to pay for formula for daycare because our daycare was so expensive. So we switched him over to the infant Neuro Pro, the yellow can, and it has worked amazing. He is happy, he is healthy. I feel zero guilt for giving him formula now. Zero guilt. It took me a long time to be able to get to the point where I wasn't guilty about it, feel guilty about it. He is happy, he is healthy, he is so smart, he is wonderful. And the most important thing is that he is fed, okay? I cannot wrap my mind around these people who shame mothers for giving their children formulas. Yes, sometimes you just straight up make the decision that you want to do formula because you don't want to breastfeed. Fine. That's fine. Your baby is fed and healthy. That's all that matters. Sometimes you have a low milk supply and you simply do not produce enough to feed your baby. Okay, then you use formula. That's okay. And then sometimes you're able to breastfeed. And that's all okay. There's no right or wrong here. That's our story. I don't know what else to say, you guys. It's just very hard. So if you are an expecting mama, I hope that this was somewhat helpful for you. If you are somebody who's gone through something similar, I feel for you. I had no idea what I was getting into with this. I have so much more respect for anyone who has persevered through something like that. It's just very challenging. So yeah, there's a lot of details that I could go into, but I think this video is long enough. Thank you guys for sticking it out with me, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.